So, this has been a tough week. And anti-Semitism, stumbling into war perhaps, all of these things and more. And I'm not going to talk about any of them. I am going to talk about forgiveness, which is the key theme that runs through this week's Torah portion. And I want to talk a little bit about why, and I've had difficulty with forgiveness, so I'm talking from a place of knowing. But I want to know what makes forgiveness so challenging and what makes it possible. This is the portion. This is the best portion to learn it from. Just a few weeks ago, we heard about Joseph the teenager strutting around in his Technicolor dream coat, telling his brothers his egotistical dreams about their bowing down to him. The second dream even includes his father and mother. Whatever he wanted his dreams to convey, they led his brothers to hate him. Not long afterwards, the brothers see Joseph approaching from afar, and first they decide to murder him, and then they decide to throw him into a pit. From that pit, they sell him down to Egypt, where he is thrown from one metaphorical pit to the next. Finally, in prison, Joseph attends to the needs of a butler and a baker, who also have dreams that require interpretation. Joseph's gifts as a dream interpreter is revealed, as is his compassion. He is remembered when Pharaoh himself needs someone to interpret his dreams. Joseph is brought up from prison to do the interpretation. Pharaoh's dreams, read correctly by Joseph, predict 7 years of plenty, followed by 7 years of famine. Pharaoh trusts Joseph to help the country put aside food during the good years for the lean years to come, and to distribute the food when famine hits his country. Joseph becomes the vizier, second only to Pharaoh. A heavy famine falls on Canaan as well. When Jacob hears that there is food in Egypt, he sends all his sons, Benjamin, his youngest, down to Egypt to procure food. Joseph and Benjamin were his youngest sons and the only sons of Jacob's favorite wife, Rachel. He has already lost Joseph. He can't afford to lose Benjamin as well. Down in Egypt, the brothers do not recognize Joseph. He's dressed up as this fancy schmancy Egyptian official, but Joseph recognizes them, and he reams them out, calling them spies. He puts them to a test, repeating an event from long ago. He will keep one of them, Shimon, as hostage, and tells them never to come back again without Benjamin. Once again, the brothers have to face their father without one of their brothers. In the depths of famine, Jacob tells the brothers to go back to Egypt, and they say, "We really can't, not without Benjamin. Joseph has told us we can't go without Benjamin." Jacob is reluctant to send Benjamin, but Judah promises his father that he will stand as security for Benjamin and make sure he returns to his father in safety. Again, the brothers do not recognize Joseph, but he recognizes them. Again, he tests them by putting silver in each of their bags, along with the food, and in the bag of the youngest, Benjamin, his own silver goblet. Then Joseph sends his assistants to search the bags of the brothers one by one, beginning with the oldest and ending with the youngest. And of course, there they find the planted silver goblet. The brothers rend their garments in grief and go back to the city. Judah and the other brothers bow down to Joseph. Joseph shouts at them, "What is this deed that you have done? Did you not know that a man like me would surely divine your actions?" And Judah says, "What shall we say to my Lord? What shall we speak, and how shall we prove ourselves right? God has found out your servant's crime. Here we are. We will all be slaves to my Lord, both we and the one in whose hand the goblet was found. Joseph says, far be it from me to do this. The man in whose hand the goblet was found, he shall become my slave. And the rest of you, you go up to your father at home. The brothers tell him that they can't leave Benjamin in Egypt. Their father will surely die of grief. They had promised to bring him back safely. And then they confess the terrible deed that they had done to Joseph long ago, and Joseph begins to weep. Joseph says to his brothers, I am Joseph. Is my father still alive? But his brothers could not answer him because they were dismayed before him. Then Joseph said to his brothers, come close to me. And they came close. And he said, I am your brother Joseph, whom you sold to Egypt. Now, do not be distressed or angry with yourselves that you have sold me down here, because it was to save lives that God sent me before you. 2 years now there has been famine in the heart of the land, and there are yet 5 years to go without plowing or harvest. And God has sent me before you to make you a remnant on earth and to preserve life, for you are to be a great surviving group. And so it was not you who sent me here, it was God. And Joseph weeps, and Benjamin weeps. Then Joseph kisses all his brothers, and they are able to speak. According to Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, this is the first recorded moment in history when one person truly forgives another. At that moment, Joseph full-heartedly forgives his brothers, but they cannot adequately appreciate the significance of his words. After all, he did not explicitly use the word forgive. He told them not to be distressed. He said, it was not you but God who sent me down here to save lives. Their act had resulted in positive outcomes. Still, the brothers imagined that he would hold them guilty and deserving of punishment. And that is why the Torah recounts a second event many years later after Jacob had died. The brothers concoct a story which they sent to Joseph. They said, your father left these instructions before he died. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers for the sins and the wrongs that they committed in treating you so badly. Now please forgive the sins of the servants of God, of your father. When their message came to him, Joseph wept. And the truth is that Jacob never sent that message. He didn't say that at all before he died. It was what we call a white lie. But Joseph understood what motivated his brothers to say these words. They used the word forgive, and this is the first time that the word appears explicitly in the Torah, because they were still unsure. Was it actually possible for Joseph to forgive them for selling him into slavery? Joseph wept that his brothers had not understood that he had forgiven them a long time ago. He no longer held anger or a desire for revenge. There was no lingering resentment in his heart. What made this transformation possible? How could Joseph have forgiven? Well, first of all, Joseph, the preening teenager, had grown up in a deep personal way as he was tossed from one pit to another. Pain had brought him to compassion. He didn't need to show off anymore. Along the way, even in the darkest of moments, he perceived that God was with him. Now Joseph needed to do the work that God had sent him to do. In this way, we can see that Joseph no longer saw himself as a victim, but as a vehicle of God's work, both in Egypt and Canaan. This in itself moved him toward forgiveness. Second, as Rabbi Sachs says, he put his brothers through a course in atonement. He really put them through the ringer. and he gave them the opportunity to change. On their first meeting, Joseph accuses the brothers of a crime they didn't commit, stealing his money. He imprisoned them for 3 days. Then he takes Shimon hostage and tells them they must go back home and bring Benjamin. In other words, he forces them to reenact that earlier occasion when they came back to their father without one of their brothers, with Joseph missing. Then the brothers speak to each other in his presence, not realizing that he understood Hebrew. They said, "Surely we deserve to be punished because of our brother Joseph. We saw how distressed he was when he pleaded with us for his life, but we would not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us." This is the first stage of repentance. They realize and admit that they have done wrong. They get it, and Joseph witnesses the shift. The second step happens when they hear that Benjamin has to remain in Egypt. They confess the entire story of what they had done to Joseph. First, recognition and admission, and second, confession. And the third step is what the medieval philosopher Maimonides calls complete repentance. At the climax of the story, Judah, the very one who once proposed the crime of selling his brother into slavery, says, "Take me instead of Benjamin. Let me be the slave so that Benjamin can go free." The circumstance repeats, and Judah has the chance to commit the same crime again, but he doesn't do so. He refrains because he has changed. Now Joseph, who has witnessed all of this, can fully forgive, because his brothers, led by Judah, have gone through the 3 stages of teshuvah, repentance, the admission of guilt, confession, and behavioral change. All the brothers are finally transformed, healed through their own repentance and forgiveness. One of my favorite traditions in the Jewish tradition is called Kriyat Shema al Hamitah, the recitation of the Shema while in bed. It is a series of prayers which includes the Shema, and it concludes with these words: Hareini Mochel, a prayer of forgiveness. Master of the universe, I hereby forgive anyone who has angered or antagonized me, or anyone who has sinned against me, whether against my body, my property, my honor, or anything that is mine, whether it was done unintentionally, intentionally, carelessly, or purposely, whether it was done through speech, deed, thought, or notion. I forgive every person. Let no one be punished on my account. It takes practice to forgive. It isn't easy. It wasn't for Joseph, and there have been times when it hasn't been for me. It is a process of small steps, well worth practicing on a daily basis. And forgiveness is a blessing, a balm. Holding on to bitterness against someone who has treated you or me unkindly or unjustly can be more hurtful than the original act. Forgiveness allows us the opportunity to live our lives without carrying around the heavy burdens of hatred and anger. The freeing power of forgiveness is greater than the endless pain of bitterness. May we reach toward forgiveness. Ken Yiratzon.